say, call the meeting to order with a prayer. Almighty God, we ask for your guidance and direction as we come together to meet. Grant us the strength to manage the challenges ahead and the wisdom to identify these as opportunities as we strive to serve the citizens of Crescent Springs. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call.
Patrick Hackett.
Here.
Chad Longbonds.
Here.
Jim McMonigal.
Here.
Chris Yarlinghouse. Vince Albanese.
Here.
Bob Mueller.
Here. Okay, next item, approval of minutes, January 13, 2020 council meeting.
Make a motion to approve the meeting.
Patrick made a motion.
I'll second it.
Vince second.
Patrick Hackett.
Yes.
Chad Longbonds.
Yes.
Jim McMonigal.
Yes.
Chris Yarlinghouse.
Yes.
Vince Albanese.
Yes.
Bob Mueller.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next item, fire authority report, Jeff.
Good evening. I'll be really brief. 79 EMS calls for the month. I'm sorry, 79 fire calls. 94 total responses and 37 total fire calls. Now we'll cover the accident on Bromley Crescent Springs, Edenberry Road. Very fortunate gentleman. I won't go into any more details than that, but I know when you guys get an email from me that it's usually something that makes the news, and I'd rather you guys know about it before it gets out to the media. So, if there's any questions about that, if I can answer, I'll answer, but as of right now, still with us. Is that it? That's
Thanks,
it?
Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
I'm going to stop by. Thank you.
Police report, Brian.
Now, is it that brief too?
Not as brief, I apologize. I'll try to be as brief. We had total crime 16, 14 collisions, 84 citations, 55 citations. Out of the crimes, we had one burglary, which was in Villa Hills, and 2 larcenies arrests for misdemeanor. Any questions on that? Anything else I can answer you on that? I just want to hit 2 points real quick. We're doing the grant application for the federal overtime grant, and I just want to throw some numbers at you. These are numbers from 2019 and to 2018. So total injury crashes, I'm going to try that one again. Total injury crashes in 18 were 36, they're down to 26 and 19. Alcohol-related crashes, 16 and 18 to 4 and 19. Alcohol-related injury crashes, 5 and 18, 1 and 19. Speed-related crashes, 17 and 18, 6 and 19. Total crashes, no restraint, 9 and 18, 4 and fiscal year 19. Just trying to let you guys know that we have been hitting the traffic very, very hard, and the numbers are now showing it. So everything we're doing is working for the traffic and trying to improve the safety here. Also on that, we did have that significant injury accident. It is still an open investigation on our end of it. We're still working it. So hopefully we'll be able to close it in the next couple of weeks. You guys, any questions? I can answer them. Not?
I just got a text from a resident of Crescent Springs whose wife was in an accident today. The resident was a former city councilman. He said kudos to the Villa Hills Police Department, to the fire, the EMS people that arrived. They worked great together. His wife has a concussion due to getting hit by the airbag. A car hit her and she went into a tree head on. But everybody did a great job, and they were there quickly. And there were little kids involved, and they were really good with the kids because Grandma was hurt.
Thank you. Well, I'll pass that on to all officers, and we're glad she is okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay.
Thanks, Brian. Huey, Public Works.
We don't have too much. We had a couple of minor snows. Everything's okay with that. I have a roofing company coming in a couple of weeks to do some repairs on the roof of the garage. I've got some leaks and some vent pipes that need covers put on them. I'll be starting over here on the PD side over here, putting some LED lights up in a couple of weeks. I've ordered another drinking fountain for the park. I'll have them installed in the spring when I have to get both of them in here. Getting ready to check the streets for blacktopping and concrete repairs and get that all scheduled up for when the spring breaks out. And I'm going to be checking on prices on these black signposts for the streets like Villa Hills has. I've had 2 or 3 people come up to me and ask me about them. So I'm going to get some prices and throw at you, and then you can decide what you want to do.
We had some of those on the survey that was done too.
Yeah, right, that was on there, and I've also had a couple more people since then come up. So I'm checking into that right now. So that's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Dewey. Mike, City Administrator report.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have some basic things that are just updates on some things that are going on. The first thing is the Heritage Bank. The transition seems to be going well. As always, April and Lori are doing a great job with this work, so thank you very, very much. Update on Bromley Crescent Springs Road project. Recently, we had a meeting with Nick Hendricks and Joe Shriver with Kenton County. The right-of-way purchase process steps has been completed. So the next step will be the relocation of utilities. And then obviously after the relocation of utilities, the project construction will actually begin. We do not have a time frame on the start date for the relocation of utilities unless Mr. Hackett, you picked up on something that I
He said he would
didn't.
probably come out to council end of March, early April to speak to us.
Moving on to the Amsterdam Road Sidewalk Project, in that same meeting, we talked to Nick and Joe again regarding this project. Nick did make a call down to Frankfurt regarding the grant status and obviously the increase in the project itself with money. He did not get any clear direction from that phone conversation that he had with officials down in Frankfurt. So he's going to be sending out an email here shortly if he finds out anything different. I think the key was potentially to see if we could have more money increased onto that grant. And with both projects, I just listed the history because sometimes both of them get confusing on what's taken place because they've gone on. Obviously the road project longer than the sidewalk project. So I will let everybody know what we find out. And lastly, we have an upcoming meeting this Wednesday. It's perfect timing because George is back in town, and we're going to meet with the Eubanks and Wessels, and we're just going to sit down, try to put everything out on the table, talk to them regarding connector ideas, specifically around the Eubanks Road area. So I'll let everybody know how that goes. If there's any questions, I'll try to answer them for you.
Any word back from Duke about paying the lower amount?
Nothing yet, no sir. No sir. I'll let you know though when I find something out.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Nothing for the mayor's report. Old business. No old business. We'll move on. New business. Food trucks.
I'll start this, but I think April and I are going to tag team this.
Okay.
She seems to be a lot more knowledgeable on this topic specifically for Crescent Springs. And it does get into the food trucks that, obviously, we have an ordinance that dates back to 1985.
Something about that.
Something, back in 1985, there wasn't such a thing as food trucks. With that said, we see communities around us that have drafted and implemented an ordinance that specifically is geared towards food trucks and their operations within cities, city parks and events and things of that nature. And I'll let you pick it up on where you're at with the food truck.
Well, I talked to Mr. Baker about the or our soliciting ordinance, and the food trucks would fall under that as it stands. They would have to get a permit, and there are several other things, background checks, everything that a solicitor would be required in order to do business in the city. We were approached by a food vendor who wants to come. He has gotten permission from one of the businesses in the city to sit in a lot on Saturdays. As it stands, in order for him to do that, he would have to pay a fee, do the background check, everything else that they're required as a solicitor, and the permit is only good for 3 days. So he would have to we would have to repeat this every time he would want to come back.
And what's the cost? The total cost for the permit? And
I think it's either $75 or $100.
what do we only do the background?
150?
It's $150, they could not do it for any longer than 3 continuous days, but they could do it for a total of 9 days per year, with no more than 3 consecutive days. It's a $150 fee, and then the background check, and they have to have a county occupation or city occupation license.
So they could do it like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then the next Friday, Saturday, Sunday,
For 9 days, I believe.
for 9 days.
Because we put that solicitation ordinance in when they were selling the sheets, if you recall, back up at the Sunoco station and so forth. We wanted to limit them, and that's when we put it in.
So I guess what council would need to decide is whether or not you want to keep the food trucks as the solicitors, or we want to go ahead and,
What happens with when we have like music in the park and stuff like that, and we have all the food trucks up there, how is that going to apply to them? And also the
we
other
have to
guy up
consider
there
that
in
too.
the Fire, the department lot up here, he was up there for 2 or 3 days selling his barbecue stuff.
And that was for a fundraiser,
But,
right?
so.
There would be
Is that
exceptions.
something that we really want to get into at this point?
Well, for the Music Fest, when we have food trucks, they pay a vendor's fee.
Right.
Okay.
But then they would have to pay an additional $150.
I asked the question of Joe Baker, who was our city attorney at the time we did this. We were exempt from the ordinance because we were the municipality and the city. And we
Okay,
had
well, that's all right then.
We were exempt from it, and from that ordinance. The reason they did it for the 9 days is because you're only allowed to have one business out of a particular address unless it's a multi-tenant building. And like Sunoco at the time was running 2 businesses. They had people there every weekend, and they were actually running 2 businesses, and it was getting pretty bad. So that's why we established it. So the food trucks, if you open the door for it and you don't do it by the solicitation, they could be somewhere every weekend. Every weekend in the park, they could be there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
just gotta be careful.
I'm not for that.
I'm picturing downtown Cincinnati, I mean, around Fountain Square and some of the turnarounds, they have events. And I'm picturing somebody wanting to do that in the Home Depot lot or the town center lot, where it's a draw. I mean, they intentionally put 12 food trucks out there to sell.
Yeah, well then, yeah, but there again, they can get a permit and do that for, 9 days or 3 days straight, 9 days out of the year. I don't wanna see them there every weekend. I mean, it's gonna get to be a problem, you know, throughout the city then. Somebody starts there,
What
then.
we did do, and it was out of courtesy, is if they had a 3-day event, like on 4th of July weekend or Labor Day weekend, and it rained one of those days, the fact that they had the permit and they wasn't able to operate that day, they did it kind of both ways. They made an exception that they could come back one more day and add on to like one of the 3 days. And we did that a couple of times, and that wasn't working. So we ended up that if you got rained out, you got rained out. So-
What are the rules like for the ice cream truck that comes through the city?
I don't think there is any
I
rule.
think they have to have
I
a
can-
Kent County
Yeah,
occupational license.
license.
But they go up around in the
Mhm.
park and they sit there for about 15 minutes and they handle the customers and then they go out in the city and then I can hear them come back up into the park with their music and they're there for 10 minutes and then they go on.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the regulation that it sounds like we have, I mean, the background checks, the permits, the occupational license. I'm just saying, if it's something we would be open to, I guess maybe the 9-day limit is the thing. Somebody wants to do that every weekend through the summer, let's say. I mean, it would be, they wouldn't be able to do it
They
right
wouldn't be
now.
able to do it. They could do it they could do 3-day weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or they could do Saturday, Sunday, up for 9 days, but not all summer long.
So you're talking only 9 days they're allowed to do it. So that it does,
If my memory's correct on
Okay.
that, I'm pretty sure.
Sounds right.
but, so we would be able to protect the sit-down restaurants because, you know, after traveling to California a lot for work, those trucks pull up right to a nice, right down the block or right near a good restaurant and park out the whole week. And it does have effect on their business.
That'd be like, I believe, you know, if you look at the situation with Taco Bell in that little strip center, it'd be like a food truck setting up in the auto zone.
Yeah,
You know, you don't want that.
no,
But the landowner would have to be okay with it, correct?
When they get the permit, they gotta identify the location and what they're selling. And then also, if it's a food truck, you need a copy of their health permit.
I just mean if they went to David's Plaza, David would have to say it's okay, correct?
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I guess. It would have to be, AutoZone would have to approve it.
yeah.
If it's on their particular lot, but I mean, if it's
their
on
particular
land.
lot.
So if they went to Buttermilk Town Center, Ramco would have to
They
say,
would have to approve it.
yeah.
But actually, if, you know, we can put in our ordinance, if we wanted to add it, that they can't compete with other restaurants within so many feet.
I think they're gonna do
But
that.
usually common sense, when you get the permit, you just tell them, say, you can't do this. And what I did was I wrote on the actual application what they could do and where they could do it. Now, did that bucket hold water? I don't know that it worked. I'll tell you that. Yeah, it wasn't to restrict them.
So the I'm sorry, George. So the ordinance we have now, no food trucks are allowed, or it's very restrictive?
No, it doesn't say that. It's just that the way I read the definitions, food trucks would be within either the definition of a peddler or an itinerant merchant.
Okay. And I know food trucks have changed quite a bit.
No more roach coach?
I'll tell you, there's some nice meals I got out there right in front of the hospitals in California.
Well, it was just kind of interesting that we're talking about food trucks, because in Tampa, they have a weekend, it's a long weekend, there was over 138 food trucks.
I
And
think Cincinnati did something similar to that.
Yeah, it was.
They did. Okay.
So I think leaving it as is what sounds.
That's fine, that's what I was gonna say, if
Yeah.
council and the mayor, you know, you're fine with the way things are, that's fine, but if you would like staff to research it further, we can do that also, just because obviously the times are different.
The only question I would have is up at the park with all the events, that's where sometimes a good food truck is. They're not restricted there, are they, with the current
Not,
ordinance?
not with the city putting on the event.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
I think a private event, they would.
Privately, we would.
yeah.
What if someone would rent a shelter and the food would be provided by a food truck?
You have to get a permit.
They'd have to get a permit.
Mhm.
So we'd have to mention that when the people rent the shelter, when we make contact with, but they do that online, don't they? They can
Yeah.
rent the shelters online.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I imagine it had to be a pretty big event for them to bring
Well,
in
you
food
never know,
truck.
you know,
Yeah.
some company or something, you know,
And in the park rules,
yeah.
a line would say, if you're gonna, God forbid, if you rent a food truck or want to bring a food truck in.
I mean, instead of having, you know, bringing in catered food, the truck's right there, get fresh, hot food. I could see a company doing that,
Are you
even
sure
for
it's
75, 70 employees.
George, thanks for that history.
Yeah.
You still got that memory.
Okay. Any more discussion on the food truck? Next item, first reading of ordinance 2020-1, approval of stage 2 development plan for 2400 Sarah Lane.
Ordinance 2020-1, an ordinance of the city of Crescent Springs, Kentucky approving a Stage 2 development plan for 2400 Sarah Lane, an area of approximately .9 acres located at the northwest corner of the intersection of Sarah Lane and Queen City Avenue and Crescent Springs, Kentucky, being approximately 200 feet from Amsterdam Road. Whereas a Stage 2 development plan has been submitted to Kent County Planning and Development Services, PDS, for an area known as 2400 Sarah Lane, an area of approximately .9 acres located on the northwest corner of the intersection of Sarah Lane and Queen City Avenue in the city of Crescent Springs, Kentucky, being approximately 200 feet from Anderson Road. Whereas the city of Crescent Springs approved a Stage 1 development plan for the aforementioned property in Municipal Order 2015-15, and whereas the city of Crescent Springs further entered into a development agreement with TriStar Ventures specifying design guidelines for Crescent Springs, and the city adopted Municipal Order 25-18, authorizing the execution of that agreement. And whereas changes have been made with the agreement of PDS staff in the city in June of 2016, and whereas the staff of PDS is recommending adoption of the submitted Stage 2 development plan subject to the condition that large trees between the subject site and adjacent condos be preserved as part of the landscaping plan, and additional landscaping will be used to fill in where necessary. Now therefore be it ordained by the mayor and the city council of the city of Crescent Springs, Kentucky as follows. The Stage 2 development plan submitted to Kenton County PDS as set forth in the report of that body be and hereby is approved, provided that the additional condition that the large trees between the subject site and adjacent condos be preserved as part of the landscaping plan, and that additional landscaping will be used to fill in as necessary.
Okay, David, you want to come up?
Hi, Jason Hall with Prism Engineering, here with David to discuss the project. I know you're quite familiar with it, so I can make it easy and just let you ask me questions, or I can tell you that there's three big points really for the site. You know, right now it's just a big stockpile of dirt. So one thing is, as you know, we're proposing a retaining wall so that we can grade the site and make it a buildable lot. Right now, not much can be done with it. Part two is we are going to preserve the landscape buffer at the rear, the existing trees, as was agreed, you know, all along, that will remain. And then third big point is drainage. We're currently working with SD1 on approval of our drainage plan to limit the flow rates from the site. So in the end, it'll actually be less flow rate than what's there now.
Okay.
So I can answer any other questions.
Any questions?
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Jason. Okay. Reading of Resolution 2020-1, Municipal Road Aid Cooperative Agreement.
Resolution number 2020-1, City of Crescent Springs, Kentucky, a resolution adopting and approving the execution of a municipal aid co-op program contract between the City of Crescent Springs, Kentucky and the Commonwealth of Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, Department of Rural and Municipal Aid for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2020, as provided in the Kentucky Revised Statutes, and accepting all streets referred to therein as being streets which are a part of the incorporated city. Be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Crescent Springs, Kentucky, that the City Council of the City of Crescent Springs, Kentucky does hereby accept all streets referred to in said contract as being city streets which are a part of the incorporated city, and the City Council of the City of Crescent Springs, Kentucky does hereby ratify and adopt all statements, representations, warranties, covenants, and agreements contained in said contract, and does hereby accept said contract, and by such acceptance agrees to all the terms and conditions therein stated. And the mayor of the City of Crescent Springs, Kentucky is hereby authorized and directed to sign said contract as set forth on behalf of the City Council of the City of Crescent Springs. And the City Clerk of Crescent Springs, Kentucky is hereby authorized and directed to certify thereto. The vote taken on said resolution, and the result being as follows, and under, this is essentially submitted by the state. Each of you will need to personally sign A and A to the resolution. And the mayor, assuming there's enough ayes, can then sign the contract, which I believe has been provided to you, but it is something we've done annually for a long time.
Okay. Any questions? Call for a motion.
I'll
Make
make
a
a mo-
motion that we accept resolution number 2020-1.
I'll second.
Pat's made a motion, Christie's second.
Patrick Hackett,
Yes.
Chad Longbonds,
Yes.
Joe McMonigal,
Yes.
Christie Arlinghouse,
Aye.
Vince Albanese,
Aye.
Bob Miller.
Passes unanimously.
Sign too.
I have a copy here. Do you have one that you want them to sign? April?
I think I have mine, mine says draft, so if you have one,
Mine
that's better.
Yeah, we'll go that.
Okay. Is there any other questions from the audience? None tonight? Okay.
Did you
Mr.
register?
Mr. Ripberger?
I would just like to mention to Mr. Cronin that if he would check with Fort Mitchell, the street post that they put in the city of Fort Mitchell that he had mentioned is under a beautification grant for the state of Kentucky. You might want to check with Megan Sanfis, because they're very expensive, and there was grant money, and there could be grant money available for that.
Good. All right. Next economic development meeting is the 12th. Finance meeting on, well, finance meeting I think is changed, isn't it?
Yes, it hasn't been settled.
Caucus meeting will be on the 24th.
What's that?
Any other comments, suggestions? Call for,
I make a motion.
I second.
Vince has made a motion, Chad second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Meeting's adjourned.